You're listening to Mad Mike's Smile Time Variety Cast.
Hello everyone, bonjour tabarnak, and welcome to another episode of the Smile Time Variety Cast. This is your host, Mad Mike, with you as usual, and I have a very special episode today. I am being joined by the one, the only, the lover of views himself, MetalTrenches. And we are going to be talking about bands that do not have a bad album, and we may or may not be talking about one band that never made a good album. So, MetalTrenches, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing alright. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for joining me on my channel for once. So that way anyone...
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. That way anyone who's like, oh, Mad Mike just joins you on your channel because, like, oh, he just wants the clout. Well, it's like, well, he's joining me on my 1,000 subscriber channel. So, and
we just have fun. I mean, some people get so up their ass about that stuff. The people used to accuse me of that with going on Quest for Metal's channel too. But it's like, dude, I just have a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
right. Yeah. So first of all, just want to get this out of the way. I do want to apologize to all 5 of my viewers who only tune into this podcast to hear my my modern releases reviews. That's not going to be happening today, nor is a classic album review going to happen, because all of the time that I put towards my channel is being put towards a very special Keeping Tabs documentary that I'm sure you all know what it is, but I will tell you that it's Aqua Aquarium. And
damn, I thought it was 6 feet under.
I know, tell me about it.
Waiting for that too.
Yeah. So I do want to apologize for that, but that doesn't mean we can't do something that is awesome. So
we'll be talking about plenty of classic bands here, so
absolutely,
I think that'll be fine.
So with that out of the way, how about we get this started? So one thing I do want to mention is that even though these are 5 bands that I don't believe made a bad album, that doesn't necessarily mean that I consider them my favorite bands of all time. There are plenty of bands that have plenty of peaks and valleys in their careers, and there's plenty of bands that have made like some real duds, like say Metallica or Iron Maiden, that I would say are better than the bands we'll be talking about today. Like, in my opinion, are bands that I prefer over the bands we'll be talking about today, even though they've made some real pieces of trash. And I just wanted to get that out of the way. And the criteria for this
sorry, the dogs keep walking.
Oh, whatever. We need more doggos on this podcast, so yeah. It's all good. A shout out to Lucy and Isabel. Those are my doggos, or technically my family's doggos, but anyways. So the criteria for the bands is they need to have at least 5 albums, because it's a little too easy to have never made a bad album if they only have like 3. So apologies, yeah. Sumo Psycho will not be on the list. Anyways.
Yeah, sometimes I get people throwing those out to me too, and I'm like, bro, they have like 2 albums, so yeah. Of course they don't really have a bad album yet. Like, I'm looking at the bands with like 18 albums. Those are the ones that really impress me.
Yeah, and like, so no Dissection either, because I think they made like, what, 3?
Yeah.
Or 2? I don't know.
Yeah. Is it 3? Oh, that's gonna bother me. It's all right. You keep talking. I'll look it up.
I do believe it's 3. But yeah, even though like Storm of the Light's Bane is just phenomenal and stuff, but
it's the best.
Yeah, and again, spoiler alert.
Yeah, it's 3.
Spoiler alert: Metallica and Iron Maiden are not on this list because No Prayer for the Dying and Saint Anger exists. So.
Iron Maiden have plenty of bad albums, if you ask me, but y'all can check out my tier list if you want to be pissed off today.
Yeah, you chose violence with that one, but
I did, I really did.
Yeah,
but it was a fun one.
Yeah. All right, so I have a list of 5 bands here, and these aren't necessarily the only bands that I think don't have a bad album. There might be more that I might be talking about in a future video. But these are 5 bands plus one band that I don't think ever made a good one. I'm sure everyone's just, gnawing at their feet for that one. So I'm going to start in alphabetical order backwards, if that makes any sense. So I'll start from like letter Z to A instead of A to Z. So the first band I have on my list here is Canadian prog metal gods Protest the Hero. And
that made my video too, so for sure I agree with that one.
Spoiler alert. Yeah, we're gonna have, I really think we're gonna have some overlaps here. But yeah.
This was one though I knew that you were gonna pick, so I tried to sort of telegraph that when making mine so that I wouldn't have as much overlap. But yeah, these guys are fantastic. Absolutely.
And even still, like Palimpsest, that was one of the best albums of 2020. I'm not sure what they're doing right now. I think they're touring, but I'm sure they're gonna be.
Their release schedule has been much more sporadic, basically since Roddy damaged his vocal cords, I want to say. Yeah. Which, understandable. It sucks for the fans, but you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
And, it also upsets me that Volition is my favorite album of theirs, and I think that's the one that they got like kind of fucked over by the people they trusted to manage the like crowdfunding campaign for that. So it's like they made like their best album and then they like didn't get paid for it. And
oh man, yeah,
it sucks. But their discography is pretty flawless. Yeah. I will say that God, why? And this always happens too, where I like blank on album names and stuff when I'm recording. But the third album?
Scurrilous?
Third album. Scurrilous, thank you. I'm not as big of a fan of Scurrilous, but it's still like a mediocre album for them is still like so much better than like even some bands' best albums.
Oh yeah, it's like an Eminem MGK case where the biggest flops are your greatest hits, like I do prefer like their first two over everything else. Like Kezia, like that is one fuck of a debut.
Yeah, or as I've been corrected many times now, it's Keziah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, which I used to always say Kezia too, but then people yelled at me and they're like, bro, it's in the song. If you listen to the lyrics, he says Keziah, and I'm like, okay, sorry. I'm more of a music guy than a lyrics guy, but
I've said Kezia, I've heard Kitsia, I've heard now Keziah, so it's just oh man, yeah, and
I just think Kezia sounds better than Keziah, but it's Keziah, I guess.
I'll just blame it on my hick French Canadian accent. That's what I'll blame it on. So,
I just know if I don't say it, somebody in the comments is going to say it. So,
and then Fortress as well. Like that is just an instant classic. One of the best prog metal albums of all time.
Yeah.
And
it's funny when I was so into Keziah because this guy in college got me into them, and then Fortress came out and I did not like it when it came out. I don't know why. I guess my brain just like hadn't matured enough or something, but I just like did not like it for some reason. And then it was like years later I came back around and I just happened to find it at like in a dollar bin. And it was like a water damaged copy, and I was like, fuck it, I'll pick it up for $1. And I re-listened to it and I was like, man, what was wrong with me? This is a slapper.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, and man. And then of course Scurrilous, I know that's like a lot of people's least favorites, because I was actually talking with Meltdown when we were hanging out a couple weeks ago, and he even said like that's probably his least favorite, even though he does still like it. So you're not alone there. I do like the production on Scurrilous. Like it's got a really heavy, dirty production that I just really, really like. Yeah. And you were telling me about his vocal damage. Like, you know what? Listening to Palimpsest, I'm sure I'm butchering that pronunciation too, but like I would not be able to tell that he did have vocal damage because he sounds awesome on that fucking album.
He still sounds great. Like I can sort of hear the difference, but I mean, it's pretty mild. And as for
Yeah.
Scurrilous too, like I think there's some real bangers on Scurrilous too.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I just find the track listing to be a little bit more inconsistent than some of the other albums, but like C'est La Vie is
Oh,
like
yeah.
one of their best songs, and that opens
Absolutely.
it up. And Hair Trigger's good, Tandem's good, Dunzel is good. Like there's a lot of Sex Tapes is great too. So
it's
it
a
like
great- that's a
opens
good
and
closer.
closes with a
Yeah.
total banger. Sex Tapes like cracks me up
Yeah.
every time I listen to it, because like it's dark. They're so good at taking like dark subject matter, but turning it into these like uplifting and very clever, oftentimes lyrics that just he's a very good songwriter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Suffice it to say.
It's unfortunate that, like, again, this might be just my perspective, I'm not sure, but I feel like they're not as like well known or as like well respected as they should be, to be honest. Like I don't know. It feels
there
like
was a time. Oh, go ahead.
it feels like, because Rhodey Walker like kind of has like a pop punkish kind of voice, like his vocal style and everything. And I feel because of that, like they got kind of lumped in with the emo crowd at the time. And so metalheads just were just like, ugh, go away. And then, yeah, I don't know.
They were like, when Keziah came out, they were kind of like mixed in with the metalcore stuff. And since I was like really into that music and that scene, they were relatively known there around that time. And then like more and more, they kind of like did less harsh vocals mixed in. So then it sort of became an argument of whether they're even metalcore or not. And I didn't really care, but I feel like there was a time where they, at least in that scene, were pretty big and they were doing some pretty decent tours. I'm still kicking myself because they were, I forget who the headliner was, but they came through Chicago and I went and saw the other bands. And I watched like part of their set, but I didn't like stick through the whole thing. And I'm like, why? Like I should have watched that whole set. But I just feel like they really lost momentum after Volition, basically, because just they kind of took this hiatus and they kind of dropped off for a bit. And I don't think they've ever fully recovered from that. But they, I'd say they're pretty underrated for sure.
And Palimpsest was still like, that was one of the best albums of 2020. And also, like, I do want to mention this too. They have an EP called, well, it's a 35-minute EP, but it's called Pacific Myth that was released in 2016. That is almost like, I count it as like a 6th studio album.
I do
because it absolutely feels like one too. And it is absolutely great. And like,
Caravan's really good.
If you've only checked out their LPs, I would definitely suggest checking out Pacific Myth, because that is they say it says it's an EP on Rate Your Music and all that, but it's like, yeah, I think that's a studio album there. But yeah, so Protest the Hero is the first band on my list, and they made 5 LPs as it looks here, so it does count.
I'm holding them, not that people can see because they're audio only, but I'm holding all 6 of them in my hand right now.
Oh, nice. Nice. That's awesome.
Big fan.
Oh,
including that poor water damaged copy of Fortress.
Fortress. Nice.
It needed some love, so.
Yep. All right.
Well, we should probably move on to the next one, I imagine. So my first choice is another very underrated band, I would say, and this is the Finnish melodic death metal band Kalmah.
Okay.
They are excellent. They just released their latest album this year, which was self-titled. And I always joke that when there's like a late career self-titled album, it's either amazing or it's absolute garbage. And fortunately, this album is sick. I did a tier list for them this year and long awaited to do that, actually, because they are just so good. Personally, too, like, I think, like, listen, I love Children of Bodom as far as like Finnish bands go, but Children of Bodom have some kind of dips in their discography, if I dare say. I know some people get mad if I'd speak anything ill of Children of Bodom, but they've got some lower tier albums. I would not include them on this list. Kalmah, on the other hand, I feel like they do everything that Children of Bodom does, but consistently better. They're not as showboaty. I know that's sacrilege, but they're not as showboaty. Like if you want like the fun, almost like hair metal kind of mixed in energy, then that's Children of Bodom all the way. Like that, you're gonna get that from Alexi for sure, and that's something he's the master of. But if you want like great solos, great keyboard, great just like the Hammond organ sound in some of the songs, killer riffing. There's a lot of similarities between these two bands. It's just that I think Kalmah's a little bit more subdued in some ways. They're a little bit, I don't know. They're more kind of on the like pure melodic death metal side, whereas Children of Bodom kind of mix in some kind of rock and roll energy, I would say,
like death and roll and stuff like that. Yeah,
they have. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 studio albums, and there is not a single dud in the mix. It's funny because even my least favorite, The Black Waltz, is like most people's favorite. So it's another one of those bands too, where like they're everybody like, you know, everybody has a different favorite pretty much, and they're all good. It kind of reminds me of another band that I won't even mention because I wouldn't be surprised if one of us end up bringing it up at some point.
So it's spelled Kalmah, right? I'm looking at the right band. Okay, because I have exposing myself as a poser, but I have never actually heard of it.
And that's the thing. Like they're one of those bands that like they've been around since, you know, they put out their first album in 2000. And it's like it's one of those if you know kind of bands, but then like outside of that, a lot of people don't know who they are. I didn't know who they were until probably like maybe around like 2010 or something. So they're already like a decade in at that point, and that was me being like a big melodic death metal fan in the 2000s and listening to a lot of that stuff.
And they're kind of like, they're kind of like a more subtle COB. Like based on what you're describing. Okay. Yeah. And you know, they'd fit alongside to stuff like you know, Dark Tranquility and In Flames and Soilwork and that kind of stuff. But there is something to be said about the Finnish sound, because there's like the Swedish sound, the Gothenburg sound, and that's like kind of the blueprint. Yeah. But Finland kind of have their own sort of spin on it, and I do feel like they almost use more keys and they use them in a very specific kind of way. And so if you like Children of Bodom, you're gonna like Kalmah. Like there's just no question. I wish I could help you out on that one, but again, no, it's fine. We spent so much time talking about Protest the Hero. It's fine if we go shorter. I would highly recommend. I mean, I did a tier list on these guys too. Again, it's hard for me to like pick one. I really like Palo, which is their 2018 album. That might be a good place to start. Seventh Symphony is really good too. Again, some people like the Black Waltz. I find it to be a little bit more kind of somber and almost doomy, which is not my thing. But if you like that, then maybe you'll like that one more. The first two albums are great too. Like, you really can't go wrong. So just check out Kalmah for sure. I'll give them a follow and check them out when I have time anyway. But so Kalmah, that's the first band on Trenches list. So wish I could help you out on that one, but it's the first time I'm hearing about them, but I will give them a listen. Nobody's perfect, right? All right. This is what I do though. This is my entire like mission in life, is to bring up bands that other people don't know. And hope that they bring me bands that I don't know too. Well, speaking of that, the next band on my list is a band that you praise a lot, and because of your praise, I decided to do a discography dive on them this year, and I completely agree with the fact that you believe they have no bad albums, and that is Norwegian black metal, progressive black metal gods, Enslaved. I knew it. Yeah. Hell yeah. Again, I went through a deep dive this year, and You know what? I'm gonna say it. My perception on black metal as a whole changed because of that deep dive.
That makes me so happy.
Yeah.
Because again, like, if I can turn anyone onto a band and like make them just like a diehard fan of them, and then also change their entire perception of like a genre, like that's what I live for. Like that's why I even
like
do this. And if it's Enslaved too, like that's an added bonus. Because like honestly, they should be at the top. They're the first band that comes to mind for me every time I think of bands with insane discographies, because they have so many albums that that one of them by all means should be terrible. Like any other band, they would have at least one really bad album, considering how many do they even have now? Like,
16.
I want to say like 16. I was gonna say 18, but yeah, and none of them are even remotely bad. Like even again, like my least favorite is still well above average. So it's incredible. They really are.
It changed my perception. Like if anyone remembers my triggering metal fan bases video where I just mentioned a black metal band and I'm like, oh, don't you mean Bathory? No, he means Emperor. And like, and so like, yeah, those videos are mostly just jokes. Everybody calm down. But anyways, looking through their discography, and like I went through like a randomizer looking through it, so I didn't go from like Viking Leerveldi all the way to Heimdall. I kind of just like randomized it and everything. Like, and I don't know if like this is just like my perception or anything, but their albums feel more, you know how we say like there's certain bands that are like singles bands, like say Ailstorm or someone like that, where like, you might like them, but they're more of like, you know, a singles type of band. I wouldn't listen to like a whole album. Like, I think Enslaved is like the opposite of that. Like they're an albums band. Like totally. I feel like they're not a band that you would put like their tracks on shuffle and stuff like that. I feel like in order to fully appreciate them or like an album, you got to like listen to it from front to back, which might be difficult to do because their albums are usually pretty fucking long. Yeah. But I feel like, especially with like Viking Leerveldi, that is an album that like is so perfect for like you're alone in your room at night and you're just like, I don't know, in one of those brooding moods, and like that is a perfect album to put on. You know what I mean? And even
I used to love putting on that and Frost while playing Skyrim. It was like the perfect pairing.
Nice. Like the closest thing they might even have to like a hit single would be Havenless, like off of Below the Lights, like that the song that begins with that Norse chant, like that, like Thy low be fundu or something like that. Yeah.
I'd argue, I agree with you that their albums are best experienced as a whole. But one of the things that impresses me about them too, though, is that they have albums that are good as a whole. But I feel like a lot of them do have like a song I would recommend somebody that works as a single. Like Isa, I think the title track is incredible. And then there are some standouts too, like on Ritir, Roots of the Mountain is like such a single. Like that song just like gets me so hyped every time I listen to it. And then there are a few others kind of scattered around like that. But overall, like they are better when you kind of like take the whole thing in, because it is sort of an experience.
Building with Fire off of In Times.
Yeah, Building with Fire. Yeah, for sure.
I would say In Times is probably my favorite from them, followed closely by I don't know if Viking Leerveldi, even Heimdall this year, like that has a very good chance of being number one on my list for the end of the year. Year after year, they almost always make my best of the year list. Yeah. So like, you know, they're still going strong, 16 albums in, and they've been around since the beginning. Like they were, you know, one of those black metal bands that existed before Burzum invented it, right? So here we go.
Yeah, man, going all the way back to I mean, the first full length was in 94, but they formed in like 91, so they've been around a long time,
and they were like
and gone through a lot of changes too.
And this is like something I'm just learning, like they were pretty much still teenagers when they wrote
Yeah.
Viking Lirveldi, which is like, because I heard like the oldest member is like 49 now, which is like, damn, that means...
Yeah, I want to say even like one of them, I think for Viking Lirveldi, like I think one of them was like 13 or something. I could be
Yikes.
remembering that wrong, but
Wow.
no, 15.
Wow.
Yeah, Ivar Bjornsson was 15 years old, the guitarist and keyboardist, when they made that. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, like, so like that's prodigy level of like, wow.
And
like,
and on top of that, like, I think they by far, besides maybe Emperor, have the best debut black metal album from that era. And yeah, like that and In the Nightside Eclipse, like, are pretty close in my mind.
And like you were saying too, like even like my least favorites, like Marjoram, or like for me, Vertebrae, even those are like solid sevens.
Yeah, Marjoram's like my favorite.
Oh,
So,
even those like are solid sevens for me. Like it's not even like they're mid. It's like they're really good. Just like I've heard better from them, sort of deal. So like
they're also, I think they're like the perfect example of a band of how to evolve your sound organically without alienating your audience. In most cases, like, because like you listen to the first album and then you listen to the newest album and they're night and day, but it's been this like gradual progression that feels very natural. And it leaves you with a discography where like every album kind of has a different flavor, which I appreciate.
Yeah. And like In Times, that would be my favorite from them. Retier is right up there too. But yeah, fantastic discography all around. And I'm gonna probably do another deep dive of them because I enjoyed it so much. Why not do it again, right? So thank you very much for introducing me to them, by the way. That was
You are
it's
very
like
welcome.
it added another band on this list for me. So and
I'm hoping it does for some of the people listening too.
Yeah, like
sure.
they like this band has almost single-handedly like changed my perspective on the whole genre. And like again, I was never really a big black metal guy. Like I know the history and everything, and there's some albums that I've listened to, but it was never my favorite subgenre. I was always more of a thrash and death kind of guy. But I black metal's moved up a couple spots for me. So So anyways, Enslaved, that is the second band on my list.
All right, I'm going to continue the trends of picking bands that I didn't include in my video, and that are kind of underrated, underrespected. A lot of people don't talk about them or seem to remember them. But Ringworm out of Cleveland, Ohio is my next one. And these guys are right alongside like Converge and Integrity and a lot of bigger names in the late 80s, early 90s, basically started, for better or worse, like started the metalcore movement.
Oh, really?
In its earliest form. And I want to be really clear to some of the, maybe some of the younger listeners out there too, like when metalcore started, there was no like Ice Nine Kills and Motionless in White and some of these kind of more sort of, dare I say, kind of emo-y sounding bands. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That kind of came later. When it started, like it forged out of the hardcore movement for the most part. And then some bands kind of brought in influences from Gothenburg, melodic death metal, like At the Gates, stuff like Killswitch Engage, things like that. But when it first started, it was out of the hardcore punk scenes. And Ringworm is a band that has never, it's the opposite of Enslaved. They've like never changed their sound. If you listen to their first two albums, they're very much like just kind of hardcore albums. And then from then on, they brought in more of the metal influence, but it's a whole lot of D-beat, a whole lot of aggression. The vocalist name is, they call him the Human Furnace for a reason. And these guys just rip. Like they're also one of those bands that kind of make the same album over and over again, but it's always good. There's some thrash metal energy in there too, I would say. But yeah, they have now, I want to say like 9 albums. I hate that this list is not just the mainline discography. Somewhere around there. Like I want to say they have like 8 or 9 albums.
Looks like they have 10 on Spotify, but yeah, because they came out with one this year, Seeing Through Fire.
And Seeing Through Fire, like, it's crazy because, you know, they've been putting shit out since around 89, and that's one of their best albums this year. Like, if you need a starting point, that's not a bad way to go. Like, it's an album I had trouble putting down. It is gym fuel. It is just pure aggression, and it's one of those. They're one of those bands, and that's one of those albums that I would recommend to people that are normally like, metalcore's stupid, metalcore sucks. Like, I dare you to listen to this album and have that same impression, because this is like, it's so good. It's so hard.
I'm that meme right now where it's like that toy monkey is like kind of looking towards you and then looking away, like, you know, that I never said anything like that.
I'm here to change minds, man. So Seeing Through Fire, and then I'd also highly recommend Snake Church, and then The Venomous Grand Design as well. But again, like, we're here because all the albums are good. You really can't go wrong. But those 3 in particular are my top.
All right, well,
picks.
I'm gonna shoot them a follow. Again, another band that there's so many worms. There's Worm Rot, Ringworm.
Yeah, there is a lot of worm. But to be fair, they were one of the earlier ones, so they're like OG Worm.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a band called OG Worm somewhere.
Oh, there probably is.
Yeah.
They're like a rapper or something.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
But yeah, I'll shoot them a follow and check them out when I get the time, when I'm not working on this review of Aqua Aquarium. But anyways, so moving on, the next band on, unless you wanted to say anything else about that?
No,
Okay,
you're good.
Okay.
Let's move to the next one.
All right, so the third band on my list is a band that I know you love. They are a very famous band in the metalcore / mathcore scene. You could even say that they were the pioneers of the mathcore genre. I don't think I need to like say who it is now. Yeah, and they are New Jersey's own Dillinger Escape Plan, and they have 6 albums, so it does count. And all 6 of them are at the very least great. Like even their lowest rated for me, which would be like Dissociation, would be a very solid 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, there's nothing below an 8 out of 10. Like, that's why even when I did my tier list for them, I think the lowest was like a B, and then it was just gradiated above that.
Even their EPs, like Under the Running Board, that's a great one. And of course, their EP with Mike Patton, Irony is a Dead Scene. That is probably the greatest EP I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
I kind of wish we had gotten a little bit more Patton with them, but Greg's fantastic too. So
yeah. Oh yeah.
So you can't
fantastic singer. And they hit the ground running pretty much with Calculating Infinity. And like, that is an album that just gets so much better for me the more I listen to it. And you got some great songs on that one. Sugar Coated Sour, that just opens with such a gut punch. And then, of course, 43% Burnt, which is just all over the place type of song. That somehow is very hooky. Like to me, like Dillinger, for me, they're almost in that Rush category where the time signatures and the progressions, they're all over the fucking place, but somehow it still like sticks in your head. Like, it's still pretty catchy, you know what I mean? Like I can like hum the fucking 43% Burnt riff right now, like like So
and they
good.
love them, those panic chords
Yeah,
is
like
what
the-
they're lovingly referred to in the math course circles for sure.
The dissonant
Anytime you hear those
riffs,
dissonant that
yeah.
no, that's the panic chord.
And of course they moved on with Miss Machine in 2004, which, like, again, that was their first album with Greg Puciato. I don't know if I'm butchering that pronunciation.
Yeah, I think you got it. Right. I vividly remember picking up that album at the Best Buy in college. I had to actually, like, there was no Best Buy near campus, so I had to like take a bus to get there. But I remember going there specifically to get that album.
Yeah.
And putting it on for the first time, and
Yeah.
goddamn, like, what an album opener!
Oh yeah,
on that
Panasonic
one.
Youth. Oh, yeah.
Panasonic Youth is just like, holy shit! Like that like blew my mind apart.
Yep. Funny enough, so the first ever time I ever heard like Dillinger was on the SmackDown versus Raw 2006 soundtrack, because Unretrofied was on there, and I thought that was a pretty good song. And like, it was funny because that was the first thing I ever heard from them, and so going through their discography, I thought I'd hear much of the same. No. Like, that is like one of their like I hate using this term, like, accessible songs, but like, it's a very like hit single style song where like everything else is just this like this wall of sound. Setting Fire to Sleeping Giants is another one. And then moving on, like, we have Ironworks, which, like, to me, that's a 10 out of 10 masterpiece for me.
I want to take a minute too with Miss Machine just to shame Rolling Stone, because I was just peeking at like the reviews of Miss Machine, and it's like almost all like 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 4.5 out of 5. Rolling Stone gave it 2 stars. What the fuck? What the fuck? You fucked up. But anyways, yeah, let's go on to Ironworks.
Ironworks. I actually just purchased Ironworks on vinyl, and it's like a bluish vinyl record too, and it looks so cool, and it sounds so good too. Like, that is an album I can listen to from front to back and just not ever get bored once. And one of my favorite songs on that album, like, besides Milk Lizard and sorry, when I do collabs like this, I just blank. Black Bubblegum. Why do I keep thinking? Yeah.
Black Bubblegum, man.
Party Smasher. Another one of my favorite tracks is the closer, Mouth of Ghosts, because it's so jazzy and so like, it's almost like a smooth jazz song in a way for like the first 4 minutes, and then it just crescendos into this super heavy, super like powerful operatic metal punk everything banger rager, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, and it just ends it on such a amazing high note. So yeah, that's a classic for me for sure.
I also love how Milk Lizard has like kind of a subtle brass section in it.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you're not paying attention, you could even miss it because it's pretty quiet in the mix. But like, when you're paying attention, it's like, it just adds like this extra hype to it.
Very ska-y, you know?
Yeah, it's like this. It's so good.
Yeah, and then of course
another band too. I'm holding all of their albums, including that EP, in my hands right now. Like, there's just a band you have to own them all.
Oh yeah,
it's like put that Pokemon band.
Yeah, and then of course Option Paralysis. One of Us is the Killer. Both ragers. One of Us is the Killer. The title track, that is probably their biggest hit, like their biggest hit single, and not only does it work as like I hate using this term, but like a digestible hit single, but it's also like an absolute great song that like anyone across the board could just listen to and fall in love with. And of course, Dissociation, like, I feel like their decision to stop after Dissociation was like planned well in advance. Because Dissociation, listening to it, it feels like a band that's saying goodbye. Like,
it's very much a swan song, and even kind of like a breakup kind of album.
Yeah.
And I think like the perfect closing statement. I always appreciate when a band knows when to go out on top rather than becoming like Metallica, where you kind of wish they had hung it up a lot earlier, but they didn't.
Like, I won't fault a band that continues their career. Like, again, musicians got to eat too. I get it.
Yeah, they got to eat.
But
I get that.
But like, it's really commendable.
The art starts to suffer, it feels like.
It's really commendable that like they decided, you know what, that's it for us. We're gonna move on to other things before this gets like really stupid and bad. Like Led Zeppelin was another one, even though that was kind of that happened because, you know, one of their members died. But in this case, like, it was just like, you know what, we have nothing but great material. And they even said like their age is like, for this style of music, they're getting too old to be able to like bring that kind of energy to every single show and like every single album. So it was just really commendable that they did do that. And they're all doing very well. Like, to my knowledge, I think Ben is in Suicidal Tendencies right now. I'm not sure.
Is that true?
Like,
I hadn't heard that.
Maybe he was for like a hot minute. I'm not sure. But
I mean, Greg's been keeping busy, that's for sure. I mean, he's had his solo stuff. He's done Killer Be Killed.
Yeah, he's in Suicidal Tendencies. So, yeah. And that's with...
Ben Wyman's in Suicidal Tendencies. Yep. Wow.
And that's with Dave Lombardo. So, like, yeah, they're a bit of a super group now.
Yeah. I like Ben, too, because he seems super down to earth, despite how crazy he gets on stage. Like, his Instagram, they, like, live on a farm, and he'll just, like, post pictures of him with, like, barnyard animals in the house and shit, and it's just like he just seems totally chill.
Yeah,
gotta love that.
But yeah, any thoughts, any more thoughts you want to give on
Dillinger? I agree, like they need to be included for sure, and they're one of my all-time faves. I'm glad I got to see them live before they hung it up. Would have liked to have seen their farewell tour, but man, do they put on a good show.
I saw them live too for half an hour at Heavy TO 2012. A half an hour with them is like 2 hours with another band, I feel like. All right. Yeah. My next pick, I think I'm going to throw in one that I did include in my video. And I'm kind of hoping you don't have it on your list, but you might, because they're definitely one of the bigger bands here. We're going back to Sweden with Meshuggah. And I get some arguments with these guys because some people, they're like one of those bands that I feel like people either get it or they don't. And I'm trying to say that in a really unpretentious way, because I kind of hate it when people are like, man, you just don't get it. It's not like, I don't mean it like that. I mean it more in terms of like, it either clicks with you or it doesn't. Like, and honestly, starting off, I was super hyped with them, and then I kind of fell off with them because I did kind of not see the value in each album. But then I like read an interview with them at one point where they were describing how every instrument in the band is percussion. And that's where it kind of clicked for me. Because at first I was kind of like, I don't know, the vocals get kind of boring for me. But then when I thought about the vocals as another percussive instrument, I was like, oh, like that totally makes sense. And then the more I listened, the more I realized like each album actually is more different than people give them credit for. I don't really consider them one of those bands that just makes the same album over and over again. They, have a very clear blueprint. All of their albums very much sound like Meshuggah, but like Destroy, Erase, Improve is much more jazzy. And that's also an album I credit with getting me into more extreme metal, thanks to hearing Future Breed Machine. Hearing that song live was like a religious experience. Like talk about panic chords and grooves and stuff. Like, holy shit. That is so sick. And then Chaos Sphere is like if you take a thrash metal album and then just like speed it up like 3 times the rate and then add crazy time signatures to it. Then Nothing, they slow it down with all the sick little grooves. That was kind of like during the new metal era too. So like I kind of feel some influence of that seeping in, even though it's not a new metal album by any means. Go ahead. I'm one of those guys who falls in the not get it category, but yeah, move on.
I'm telling you, man, keep coming back to it, because I swear to you, one day you will listen to a song and you'll go, oh, this is actually pretty sick. I'm telling you, it could be 10 years from now. I don't know, but I'm telling you, like, it's worth it.
Yeah.
And again, even stuff like I meme on Catch 33 quite a bit, because that is one of those albums that even within the fan base, you either love it or hate it. I don't hate it. It's my least favorite, but there's things I really value about it, because it is just one. It's basically one song split up into 13 sections, which is kind of impressive in its own way. So that's, you know, a much more kind of like prog emphasis album. Obscene, of course, has Bleed on it. So everybody knows that song, even if you like don't know the band. Koloss is like one of my personal favorites. That one's just like pure heavy, and the one I probably recommend the most. And I think every song kind of has its own flavor the most on that album. And then their latest stuff is sick too. So I don't know, like I just think since the 90s they've just been killing it, and I get why some people aren't that into it, but personally I think that they're fantastic.
It's
very talented.
Not for a lack of trying on my part. It's I really tried. They're like another, well, not as egregious as Tool for me, but like they're like another like Tool type band where like I really want to, because I don't want to get shit on online. Like,
hey man, you like what you like, and you don't like what you don't like. It's fine too.
It's the same with like In Flames or something like that. It's like I really want to, but it's just, oh my god. I guess that's how this is gonna be. And even Immutable last year, I'm like, man, is this gonna grab me at some point? So it's, you know what, I'll give them chances. You know what, I keep revisiting Paul Thomas Anderson's filmography every like couple of years, trying to see if like, okay, if it'll finally click, and like it still doesn't. So like I'll always give it a chance.
A good comparison.
I'll always give it a chance. It's just
that's another
like,
one we largely disagree on too.
Yeah, that one, like, oh man, if I ever do movies on my channel, like that's gonna
Dude, if you did a video hating on Paul Thomas Anderson, that video I think would blow up, honestly, because you would have so many hate comments on it.
Oh man, like, yeah.
And you know, to be fair too, I think the Paul Thomas Anderson community is kind of the Tool community of the film industry.
Oof. No, I would say Nolan is, but personally, and I say that
yeah, that's true. Fan, but the difference is, like, I feel like more people consistently like Nolan's films, even if they kind of get too crazy about it. But yeah, that's a fair comparison too, because it's like the films aren't overly complicated, but people like to treat them like they're more complex than they actually are. Not to say they're not good, but they're definitely not like these big brain movies that some people make them out to be.
They're slightly, and I say this as a fan of Nolan and love him, but they're slightly artsier blockbusters. That's what they are.
Yeah, they're like, they're kind of like smart movies for dumb people. And again, that's coming from someone who really likes Nolan's films, but that's the way I often view that. Like, they're made for a broad audience, and to that broad audience they feel really smart, but they're much smarter movies out there.
Anyways, got off the bunny trail there, but there. Like, you know what, I'll get this joke out of the way. You know, Meshuggah, Doug Walker core. But anyways,
oh like... no! Now that is upsetting.
Man, but
all right,
like
next band,
we've never seen those Jens and Doug in the same room. You know what I mean? So like, I'm just saying.
Funny.
But anyways, yeah. So my next band, this is the fourth band on my list, is a band founded by the guy who pretty much invented death metal out of Florida, Death.
Okay. I figured this was going to wind up on the list for sure.
Again, like the jazzier, more avant-garde era of them, so like Human and Individual Thought Patterns, those are my least favorite, even though those are still solid sevens for me. They've never made
I'm also one who Human's one of my least favorite. I like Individual Thought Patterns a lot. I'm not a big fan of Symbolic either, which I know some people love. But again, it's one of those bands that, this was what I was referencing earlier too, where it's like your least favorite is somebody else's favorite, and none of them are bad.
Yeah, same here. Like they've never, and they have different eras too, which is surprising because their discography spans 11 years. And they have like a era that you'd consider them thrash, an era that you consider them technical avant-garde, and an era where it's like just full-on progressive death metal, which is like fascinating for a band that was like only around for, you know, a decade and change, really. And Scream Bloody Gore, that's actually my favorite from them. Like that is one of
my favorites too.
That is one of the few albums that I would give like my 11 out of 10 score to. Like it's better than fucking perfect. Like it's
great.
Like as much as I love Rain and Blood, I feel like Scream Bloody Gore is a much more extreme version of that. Like it's almost like a perfected version of Rain and Blood, because it's like musically it's a thrash album, but like it's got like
a lot of thrash in
the barking death metal style of vocal, and like his vocals on that album are so powerful. Like his screams, like especially on Evil Dead and Infernal Death, like he's just, it's scary and so enthralling at the same time. And his guitar work on that album, phenomenal solo work, and it features Chris Reifert of Autopsy fame on drums, so it's kind of like a starting point for him too. And then of course moving on to Leprosy, another fantastic album.
We'll talk about a band too that's had some incredible people in its constantly rotating lineup.
Oh yeah, it's almost like a Megadeth. Like it's you know, Chuck Schuldiner was the constant throughout, and then it was basically a glorified solo project for him. Like that's what it was. And of course Leprosy, that's got Pull the Plug and the title track and everything. Spiritual Healing, that one is like not as well loved by everyone, but I think it was like a great, like how do you say it, like not a transcending, but it's like a dividing point between like their really, really dark, heavy thrash era and the more progressive side of them. And then of Human Individual Thought Patterns, you were talking about.
And
go ahead.
And Individual Thought Patterns, one of the reasons I realized I love that album so much, and it's one of my favorites, is, dude, the lineup on that album to me is the best death lineup, because you got Chuck, of course, you've got
Gene
Andy
Hoglan.
LaRocque of King Diamond, you've got Gene fucking Hoglan on drums, and then you've got Steve DiGiorgio on bass, who's also been in fucking like every band. Like that is a powerhouse of a lineup right there. And they fucking killed it. Like holy shit. Like when I was doing my background research for that death video, and I was like going into what the lineups were, I got to this one and I was like, God damn. Like
that's
that
almost
is
a super
unfuckable with lineup.
And Symbolic as well. Like that, I know that's like not one you're a big fan of, but like that's my second favorite from them, and it's my favorite of their more progressive era. The title track on it's fantastic. Crystal Mountain is just one of the trippiest, most beautiful songs Chuck has ever written. And again, Gene Hoglan is actually on that album as well, and his performance on it is just so good. Like that guy, I mean, he's never, again, if we're going to talk about bands that never made a bad album, let's talk about it.
Gene's incredible. Like, even his stuff with, like, that's why I keep giving people shit too, because I was surprised at how many people have kind of, it feels like they've sort of turned on Death Clock over the years. I was like really shocked to see like Death Clock's lame, Death Clock's cringe. I'm like, bro, do you not, and some people were like, oh, the cartoon band. I'm like, bro, Gene Hoglan is their drummer. For real. Like, it's not just Pickles.
Oh, man.
It's fucking Gene Hoglan.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you? But anyways, that's another aside.
Death Clock is always, like, you should have seen the reviews for them on Metal Archives when that show first came out. Like, it was just like who hurt you? Like,
yeah. It's like, do you hate fun? Like what's wrong with you?
Show
like,
me.
It's funny. It's co-signed by so many metal musicians who have been on the show.
Yeah.
And the music is really good, and it's like written by actual musicians. So I feel like people just like to shit on things sometimes.
Yeah.
But anyways.
And then Sound of Perseverance, like that is such a well-produced album. A lot of people don't like Chuck's vocal style on it. Like it's a lot more high-pitched.
Which is,
I think it fits the music.
I also found that weird.
Well.
I think it's a great album.
Yeah.
I think
it fits the music very well. And Richard Christie on drums on that one is just so good. Spirit Crusher, that is one of their most famous songs. Mostly because, well, for me anyway, it's the midsection of that song that just gets me every single time. Like, I'm just like I'm thinking about it and I'm just like bobbing my head right now, like that. Like that whole like middle section of that song is just phenomenal. But yeah, like R.I.P. Chuck. You did not last long enough in this world. It's unfortunate. And it's really unfortunate too because he had another band after death that was called Control Denied that had a pretty interesting debut, The Fragile Art of Existence, and it's too bad he couldn't exhaust that. Like, I don't know if you ever heard that album, but it's almost like a very progressive Alice in Chains. Very interesting album to check out, and it's too bad he couldn't exhaust that. But anyways, that is Death. They have 7 albums, all good, all ranging from good to absolutely fantastic. And do you want to add anything to that one, or you want to move
No,
on? Okay.
I mean, I get why people in the comments on my video were that was the most commented album. Why isn't Death here? Why isn't Death here? And I was like, look, I get it. I just chose to include other albums instead, or other bands instead. But yeah, there's no question. So I'm going to take us back to Finland again for another underrated melodic death metal band, and that is Moore's Principium Est. And I feel like these guys are even less known than Kalmah, but have actually been around for almost the same amount of time. They've actually been active since 1999, so they've been around like roughly the same. Their first album came out 2003. They have 8 albums now. Technically, the 8th album is a mixture of re-recordings from the first 3 albums, I want to say. So, and I will say this, I wasn't super hyped on that because I kind of, for the most part, don't like when people re-record their music when it's already good and it didn't need to be messed with.
Yeah.
So that, I feel like that's almost like a compilation thing. But The Unborn is like, if you like symphonic elements in your death metal, you're gonna love this band because they take the keys to the max, like very kind of orchestral sounding stuff. They love to play with the simulated strings, and there's like a lot of hooks in there. So you'll hear that on The Unborn. I would highly recommend the track Pure, which is the opening track from that. Super hype. My personal favorite is probably Liberation Equals Termination in 2007. Some people didn't like this album because it's like so heavy on the synthesizers, but that's what I love about them the most. So for me, it's like perfect. I love that album start to finish, and it's like super bombastic.
One quick thing here. Do they have a cover of Livin' La Vida Loca? Is that a cover of Ricky Martin?
Yep. Indeed it is.
I gotta listen to
this. They have a sense of humor too, for sure. God. So yeah, they're great and such talented musicians. They have had a bit of a rotating lineup, but even so, like they've consistently year after year put out really just top-notch albums. I would even say 2027, which I think that might have even made one of my best albums of the year lists. I can't remember. If not, it was probably very close. But that is a phenomenal album, and that's them, almost, it's like 20 years into their career, and they're still putting out some of their best stuff. So yeah, highly, highly, highly. This is one of those bands I'll include them in any video I possibly can because I want to like shout their name from the rooftops because nobody fucking knows who they are. And then I'll come across a few people, like the people who know them. It's like a really close-knit group where they're like, dude, MPE is amazing. And I'm like, I fucking know. I wish more people knew it. So like they've got a cool community. It's just very small.
Guilty
and
as charged.
I hate to,
not knowing them.
Yeah. I mean, and again, like that, it's no fault to your own. I just happen to come across them during the cycle for, I think And Death Said Live, or it might have been I think it was Dawn of the Fifth Era, actually. Either Metal Sucks or Metal Injection posted the music video from that album, and I was hooked ever since. And it was a similar thing in the article where they're like, dude, this is a band that like has been around forever and gets no respect, and now I'm trying to carry that same torch for them. So
All right. Well,
yeah, check out Moore's Principium Est.
another Rodney Dangerfield get no respect band. I'll add
Yeah,
add
for
a
real.
follow. Give him a follow. I'm sorry. I wish I could help you out on this one.
No,
like,
it's fine.
I'm
I mean, we've been talking for a long time. In
Yeah.
fact, I need to take like a quick less than 5-minute break just to give somebody some food, and I will be right back. Is that all right?
That is no problem. So that's this is our collab with MetalTrenches. I hope you guys are enjoying this one. And I'm guessing he's going to feed his dog. For anyone listening, if you want to place your bets right now, who is MetalTrenches feeding? Is he feeding one of his children, or is he feeding a dog, or is he feeding a cat? Place your bets right now, and if you win, you get a cookie. Anyways,
Okay, back
right.
to it.
so I was actually making a bet of like, is he feeding a dog or a cat? But anyways,
The wife.
oh.
So neither.
Well, everyone loses anyways. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyways, so the next band on my list, by the way, I'm giving MPE a follow, so I'll check him out when I get the time.
Oh yeah.
So hey, I'm getting introduced to quite a few bands here. It's great. So anyways, moving on, I'm gonna introduce you to this very very unknown band. So this is the last band on my list, and this is the reason why I waited until this particular day. We're recording this on September 25th to do this collab, or record this collab, because I wanted to.
So I know who it's gonna be.
So
then.
I wanted to, but I wanted to listen to this album so I can finalize the list. And this is a band out of Buffalo, New York, death metal gods, one of the pioneers of the genre, and never made a bad album since. That is Cannibal Corpse.
Very
And
true.
they hit the ground running with Eaten Back to Life. Very good album, has a lot of good, like, I want to say hit singles, even though, like, I'm sure none of them ever charted on Billboard ever. You know, Born in a Casket, Skull Full of Maggots, Scattered Remains, Splattered Brains, stuff like that. And, you know, they just never looked back ever since. Butchered at Birth has probably one of my favorite songs from them, Meat Hook Sodomy. Like, it just moves so fast.
The song titles, man.
Oh, yeah. The song
It's so
titles,
great.
like, yeah, we're getting to Tomb of the Mutilated. This one just has, like... it's almost anal cunt
Just
level.
no chill, just no chill at all. Like
The
it's
song titles
crazy.
on Tomb of the Mutilated are like anal cunt levels of edgy. Like, and
I
trails
come blood.
and trails ripped from a virgin's like, oh my
C
god.
word, yeah.
Yeah.
The one word that's too spicy for YouTube,
Yeah.
even though in the UK it's like saying like loser basically.
Yeah. But and then of course the Bleeding is one that I'm not too big on, even though I do think it's good. Like, again, this is another band where, like, even the ones I'm not too big on, like, I know one of your favorites is Skeletal Domain. Like, that one's like
So good.
a solid 6 for me, and it's still one that, like, I can enjoy for the most part. Same with Red Before Black, but, like, they've never made a bad album, and it always, like, even to this day, listening to Chaos Horrific, I feel like I'm hearing a band that's still in their prime, and I feel like I'm hearing a band that is still driven to be the best they could be. Like, and that was like one of the reasons, like, you know, there was a split in '94 with their original singer, who we will be getting to. Hint, hint.
Oh yeah,
later
that's right.
on.
We still have that too. Oh my god.
and like, it always felt like they were a band that always just wanted to be the best they could be. Whereas Chris Barnes at the time just felt like he was just happy being, Chris Barnes, and never really wanted to progress from that. And then they moved on to Corpse Grinder, who had a similar mindset, like Warcraft obsessed man-child who's in love with claw machines, but like he's still driven to be the best possible singer he could be, and he takes care of himself very, very well. And he still sounds like he's barking on this most recent record, Chaos Horrific. Like he is he sounds so intense, and so like his voice doesn't sound like it's like worn out or anything, which is just mind-boggling considering he's been screaming for like what 2/3 of his life. But anyways,
well, and I also feel like most bands, when they have this many albums out, like it becomes an issue where when you talk about them, everybody talks about like the early albums. And it's like, oh yeah, the new stuff's good, but like, yeah, the early stuff, that's where it's at. Like, that's not really the case for Cannibal Corpse. Like especially, somebody put up a Twitter poll just the other day of like, what's your favorite Cannibal Corpse song? And I was like, I have to say Killer Become over the years has really risen in the ranks, and that's decades into their career. They're still putting out some of their best tracks and most memorable tracks too. Like everybody just instantly latched onto that hook, that fire up the chainsaws. Like everybody knows that one now.
Scourge of Iron was another one.
Yeah. And it's like, we could all be sitting around still talking about Hammer Smash Face, which, don't get me wrong, is a great song and it's a classic, but since then they've had many other Hammer Smash Faces. And it's pretty impressive to see. And I agree, Chaos Horrific, like, still totally killing it. I even think it's better than the last two, personally. So
like it's right on par with Violence Unimagined for me. It's very likely going to end up on my list at the end of the year. Again, this is kind of like my quasi review of Chaos Horrific. Like, again, great album. Like, I am enjoying Eric Rutan in this band a lot more than I thought I would, because I really like Pat O'Brien was one of my favorite guitar players. And then we all know what happened there.
I mean, the problem is Pat O'Brien got lost in the sauce and started living the songs. It's part of the problem, I guess. I mean, he said he had skulls in his basement, and guess what? He had skulls in his basement.
Yikes! Yeah. Oh man. That's heartbreaking, but like, but you know what? Eric Rutan has filled the role so well, and again, he's the producer for these albums too, so it's like he has a lot more say now, it feels like, and he's fitting into the band a lot better than I thought he would.
He just slid right in there, and I mean, it helps that he was producing their albums for so long before he jumped in, but it seemed like he just knew because he had the experience. So
but anyways, like as far as my favorites go, it would be Torture. That's an album I can listen to from
Torture's a banger.
And The Wretched Spawn with the most wholesome album cover of all time, we gotta say. Totally. But that has Frantic Disembowelment on it, which is like, I'm listening to it, I'm like, how the fuck did they do that song? Like mind-blowing. But anyways, Cannibal Corpse, that's the last band on my list. Band is almost very close to my neck of the woods in Buffalo, New York. I'm just across the border, across the Niagara River. So like, there's a bit of a local love there, even though they're in Florida now, and they're, in Pat O'Brien's case, certified Florida men. But anyways, Cannibal Corpse is the last band on my list, and we'll be getting to a very similar band that never, I think you know where I'm going there. But anyways,
My last band, so I'm looking at my list here, and it's hard because like there's a couple of different options here. I could go with Dark Tranquility or Insomnium. I could easily go with Between the Buried and Me. I could go with Carcass, but I think as I'm looking at this list, the one that stands out the most to me, that has probably been just the most consistent and was a real heartbreak. Just wow, a year. Has it only been a year? Or has it been 2 years now? It's one of those things where I'm losing track, but it's got to be the Black Dahlia murder.
Oh man, yeah.
Rip to Trevor Strand, man. That really, like, I'm one of those people who, when everybody else is posting about like so and so died or whatever, I'm kind of rolling my eyes and being like, yeah, it sucks, but like, look, you didn't know him, so like, why are you acting like you have this personal connection? I finally had that when I heard about Trevor, and that's having never met him. And actually, admittedly, sadly, I've never seen them live either, which makes it even more sad because I'm never going to see them with Trevor now. But I remember buying Unhallowed probably a year after it came out and just loving that album. Like, they really did kind of like take all they kind of mixed on that album what Gothenburg melodic death metal was doing with kind of classic Florida death metal stuff, and really kind of just forged their own kind of US sound of melodic death metal that was sort of the halfway point between those things, but also was like young and appealed to like the metalcore and deathcore crowds too, and just had this broad appeal and caught the attention of Metal Blade instantly for a reason. And so I've been following them, ever since high school. And so they've become like one of like my bands in a way it feels like. And I just have this personal connection. And I have memories associated with basically every single album at this point. And so, and then also just seeing like what he did for the scene. Like I've never heard anyone say a single bad thing about him. Yeah. And I loved his articles he would do where he would just do what I try to do now, which is just shout out all these completely unknown underground artists and just try to put some spotlight on them. And so, between just him and then like the rest of the band too, just incredibly consistent work from Miasma, which I didn't used to love, but now love. Nocturnal is incredible. And like, I love the artwork on that album too. It's just this very classic kind of black and death metal kind of looking cover. It actually kind of reminds me of the Sacramentum cover too. It's
very dissection like in a way.
Yeah. That is a very, kind of cold looking album cover. Deflorate is great. Rituals, one of my personal favorites, another great album cover, but then just also start to finish, like every track is a total ripper, from A Shrine to Madness to Moonlight Equilibrium, all the way to Blood in the Ink. Like, the Widow on that album is insane. Everblack was another one that I initially didn't love, but grew on me quite a bit, and awesome. Like, I was considering doing like a spooky albums cover list, and I love the like big giant spider legs coming out of like the tornado on that one. It's just really creepy, freaky looking cover. People shit on Abysmal, and again, it's probably one of my least favorites, but even that one like has Vlad, Son of the Dragon, Receipt, Threat Level number 3. So there's still plenty of great songs on there. And Nightbringers was like another late career like top album for them. Like, I'd put that one in the top 3. Brandon Ellis just really bringing it on the guitars for that one. And again, every song's great. And Going Out with Verminous, which is a solid album too. I was also joking with my wife because it's funny because I own all these albums on hard copy, and I've been looking at them for years, but I never noticed that they have like such a color scheme for each album that you could refer to them by color. Like Unhallowed's like the black album, Nocturnal's the blue album, Ritual's the green album. Like, you can kind of go like that. And they're all kind of different.
The purple album,
Yeah, exactly. Like they kind of messed it up with Verminous because now they have 2 green albums, but what are you gonna do? They're all good though.
I was never really into them, but it was a band that like for some, I respected and liked what I heard, but for some reason I just never got back around to it. I don't know. I'm very ADD and lazy. But like, again, just going back to that point, like, it's really unfortunate what happened. And like, even though I, wasn't as connected to them as, their fan base was, it's not something you ever want to see. And like, I can't imagine like what the fan base is going through and everything, even to this day. Like, it is a sad thing that happened. And like, I feel for the band and I feel for the fans. Like,
it's a huge loss. It's a big loss to the whole metal community.
And, and even though I wasn't like as well versed into them, I remember seeing interviews with him on Cannibal Corpse's documentary. Actually, it was Centuries of Torment. And like, he was talking about them and just like, seeing him in interviews, he seemed like such a sweetheart of a guy. Yeah, just this real big metal nerd and everything. It was just so cool.
Huge nerd.
Yeah,
it's great. Love D&D too.
Yeah. And that is a band that I will get around to at some point when I'm done making Aqua Aquarium documentary. But so I wish I could add to that one, but again, rest in peace, Trevor Sternad, and fuck you, Scale It Back, you fucking asshole.
Yeah, what a piece of shit that guy is. Jesus Christ. Fuck that guy, dude.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. But
what a see you next Tuesday.
Yeah. We'll leave it at that. Well, unless you want to add anything else.
No, I think we're good to move on to the final segment.
Yes, let's get to the fun part now. So I just talked about Cannibal Corpse. That was my last band. And let's get to a band that is related to Cannibal Corpse because they have the same singer. Cannibal Corpse's original singer, anyway. And that is a band that makes me want to be 6 feet under. 6 feet under. Oh, my God, like,
and that was my first thought too when you gave me that prompt, for sure. I've got another one that like kind of I just don't think any band quite fits as well as 6 feet under, because Jesus Christ, like
even at their
oh my God,
even at their best they were mediocre. Like, Haunted to me is like probably their best one.
Yeah, that's the one album I hear people defending too. It's like, what about Haunted? Haunted's okay, but I'm like, I don't hear people being like, dude, Haunted's amazing. Like, it's always like, oh, Haunted's fine.
And like,
I'm like, okay, sure.
Oh my God, like this is death metal's version of butt rock. You know what? I'm calling it. I'm giving this a genre. This is death butt. Like, this is what it is.
Death butt.
Death butt.
Butt death.
Butt death, whatever. Like, this
butt metal.
Fucking terrible. And don't even get me started on the Graveyard Classics shit. Like, that is awful.
And frankly, to this day, if somebody asks me what's the worst album you've ever heard, Nightmares of the Decompose is still the first album that comes to mind. And what a piece of shit. What a colossal piece of shit.
That is E on top of E, and like, you know what? I always say this.
E to the eth degree.
Like, I always say this, Cannibal Corpse made the best possible fucking career move ever when they got rid of him. Because that was a risky move, looking back on it. Like, getting rid of, like, their singer, who at the time was very well respected, very popular, and was basically the face of the band. And replacing him with a guy, like I said, who knows how to take care of his voice, doesn't smoke fucking weed all day. And if you listen to that Vile, like the Cannibal Corpse Vile demo, he started doing the E shit. Like, and it was absolutely terrible.
Immediately.
And
people defend it. Like, I still run into defenders, and I'm like, yeah, man, all these new metal vocalists, they like have watered it down. Like, this is pure, like, ugly metal. And I'm like, okay. Sure.
And even looking back on the first 4 CC albums, like, it almost feels like 2 different bands. Like, there's what the other members were doing, and then there's what Barnes was doing vocally and lyrically. And It just seemed like it didn't fit. Like and I made this comment actually in one of the Discords the other day of like, to give this analogy for Cannibal Corpse's singers. Corpse Grinder is like a very good wife where like they're very dependable. You got a lot of stability with them, and you'll never have to really worry about anything. Like they're always someone you can count on. Whereas Chris Barnes is like a psycho fucking girlfriend where like the sex might be good, but you're gonna end up with your golf clubs in your fucking windshield at some point, or something like that. And like that is my analogy for this. And Cannibal Corpse got out of that right at the right time because Barnes lost his voice pretty much right away, and it's only gotten worse ever since.
Yeah, it's destroyed. Like it's so bad.
And like now
it's like just stop.
Like
just stop.
And now he just sounds like a dog with like, I don't know, bronchitis or something like that.
That's so awful.
And he's just
pick up the pieces of my destruction.
Like
that's a pretty good impression, actually.
Yeah, and like, oh my god. And yeah, Nightmares that Decompose. Like that it's fascinating to me because they've made like what, 10 studio albums, something like that. I don't know.
Too many.
Yeah, too many.
So however many it is,
and
too many.
It's all been utter dog shit. Like, and not even like, well, I guess it can be fun dog shit, but like, another band that I was talking about that I almost put on here was Psycho Sinner. But even then, it's like,
yeah, that's a good one too.
Even then, it's like extremely memeable dog shit. And I guess 6 Feet Under can be memeable, but it's still absolutely terrible and painful to sit through. And
yeah, like, I don't know. If I ask myself, would I rather sit through a Psycho Sinner song or a 6 Feet Under song? I might honestly choose Psycho Sinner, and that's sad to say. But like, at least the guy, like, he can write a song. They're not good, but it's like it's a song, and it's like it's 6 Feet Under is not. I don't know. Maybe that's too far. I don't know, but
yeah,
it's pretty bad.
Is 6 Feet Under your same pick? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it was going to be, but it's just so that we have something else. I'll throw another one out there, and I don't think they're quite like no good albums, but since you did a death metal pick, I'll do a black metal pick. Dark Funeral has always been kind of my punching bag for black metal, sort of unfairly because they're not awful. They're not 6 Feet Under level at all, but of all the discographies I've gone through in black metal, they're the one that most consistently just like left me asking why. And just like I don't get why like some people love this band. I get why they're not that big because they've never been that big, but man, like they're a lot of their stuff to me personally, like if people listening out there love them, I know some people who love them, that's great, that's fine, taste is a thing, but for me, like a lot of this is just nothing. Like it's just, I listen to it and literally I'm looking at a discography that I went through in detail and listened to every album multiple times. Yeah. I can't remember a single song from like any of this.
Ouch.
It's just, I don't know. It's just so. Now, I will say, if I were to recommend an album from them, Where Shadows Forever Reign from 2016 is actually quite good. I like that one. But outside of that, even last year they put out We Are the Apocalypse, and it was just like yet again, like just a completely mediocre, nothing of an album.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad because I believe the drummer on that album is in some other black metal projects that I really like, and he jumped on for this album. So I'm not trying to say that the members aren't talented in their own right. It's just like when they come together, they just make nothing. it's just nothing to me, so in my opinion.
Painfully,
and I would rather listen to any other black metal band.
Yeah, so just painfully mid.
Yeah, just insanely mid. Like they're like the middest of the mids. Like 6 Feet Under is terrible.
Yeah.
But Dark Funeral is just like, it's almost like it's sad because in some ways it's almost worse. It's not actually objectively worse, but it's almost worse to me because it's like you were saying, you can kind of meme on 6 Feet Under and sort of have fun with how it's like so bad it's good, almost like a bad movie or something.
Yeah.
But with Dark Funeral, it's just boring. It's like it's like sitting down with your friends hoping that you're gonna have like a so bad it's good movie experience, and then it's just dull. And everybody's miserable.
Yeah.
That's Dark Funeral to me.
Okay.
So yeah.
So it's like a Passengers instead of The Room, basically.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Dark Funeral. That's your pick, and I picked 6 Feet Under. Like there's 6 fart under, more like anyway.
Somebody should just go through and replace all the E's with fart noises, and it wouldn't make that much of a difference. Oh great, I'm giving you ideas already, I can tell.
Oh my god, here we go.
You need to finish that documentary first. Like you cannot do this.
I can't. Oh man. Yeah. Oh man. But yeah, so yeah, those are our picks. Do you agree with us? Do you not agree? Once again, thank you very much, Trenches, for joining me on this one. This is actually our shortest collab, actually. No.
Oh God, is it?
Yeah, probably. I don't know. But yeah, thank you very much, and we will be moving on to our Q&A. I will only be doing this myself, but again, thank you very much, Trenches, for joining me on the podcast and giving me your list of bands. I got some new bands for me for myself to check out, and of course I
can't wait to hear what you think of them.
And sure. I gave you a list of relatively unknown bands for you to check out as well.
Never heard them before.
Yeah,
I'll get on that.
Yeah, man. So anyways, thank you very much, and once again, before we do sign off here, I just want to say thank you for giving me all of your help over the 2 years now ish, and my channel would be absolutely nowhere without your help and without you singing from the rooftops, check out Mad Mike.
I mean, it's the same type of mentality too. It's like when I see something that I feel like deserves more attention and the effort's being put in, the talent's there, the quality is there. It just doesn't have enough eyes on it. That's what I like to do, is put eyes on it. So I'm happy to help.
Yeah, and absolutely, yes, I do listen to all your advice with the thumbnails. I've made it my own.
They've been getting better.
I've made it my own, and I feel like I have improved a lot. So
as you should.
But yeah, and thank you for everything. And once again, I'm glad to finally have you on my channel instead of the other way around. So thank you so much.
No problem.
That being said, everyone stay tuned for our potential collab on his channel where we talk about toxic fan bases again.
Yeah, we need to do our annual toxic fans. We should probably schedule that soon. So absolutely.
But anyways, thank you very much. And we are moving on. And now it is time for the Q&A. So if you want to ask your questions, feel free to join my Discord server. Be nice on there for a month, and I will give you the permission to ask questions for the podcast. So the first question asked to me is from Proud to be a Lithuanian, aka Toxic Rooster 84, and he says, "Can you pump it better?" Of course, he is referencing Electric Callboy, and you know what? After seeing Electric Callboy live, I gotta say, I can pump it better. So I saw Electric Callboy on September the 10th, and they put on an absolutely phenomenal show. And for the first time in my entire life going to metal shows, I actually saw people cosplaying as the band members. I had never seen that before at any show in my entire life. Not at a Metallica show, not Maiden, not Megadeth, not Slayer. Nobody. So it was just a very interesting experience to see band member cosplaying at a fucking metal show. That was awesome. And I don't know what it is about them, but certain bands just have it. They just have it. and Electric Callboy definitely has it. And I can't wait to see where they go next, what their next album's gonna be like, what their next tour is gonna be like. This band is phenomenal, and to answer your question, Lithuanian, Rooster, whatever, yes, I can pump it better. Thank you very much for your question. And the next question is from the Demon Empress, aka Grace Omega, aka my girlfriend. What are your top 5 favorite scary movies? Well, that's a good question, Grace, and I have my list actually right here if you look me up on Letterboxd, letterboxd.com/madmikeofmetal. I have a list of top 10 favorite horror movies. At number 5, I got The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick. In terms of Stanley Kubrick's filmography, that is like one of his lower tier movies, even though I think it is absolutely phenomenal. Jack Nicholson's performance in it is awesome. Shelley Duvall is absolutely, she puts on the performance of her lifetime, and the suspense in it is great. It is so well shot, and it gave birth to arguably the greatest parody of all time when The Simpsons did The Shinning. At number 4, I got the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original from 1974, directed by Tobe Hooper. And this movie was the pioneer for slasher films. It is still, to this day, just 90 minutes of pure hell to watch. And you're just watching this psychotic fucking family that has a house full of people's skin being used as curtains and shit, and these poor teenagers are just absolutely horrified at what they're seeing. And you might think it's a little bit dated, but I watch it and it feels like I'm watching a documentary from the 1970s on a serial killer. It's just done so well for its time. It's very gritty, it's very dirty, it's very unclean. I feel like I need a shower after watching it, and ultimately it is a very uneasy watch, which I love about it. At number 3, it is the 1973 film directed by William Friedkin, The Exorcist. This features one of the greatest child performances of all time by Linda Blair and voiced by Mercedes McCambridge. And even for me, who's not a religious person, I can watch this and be absolutely terrified that this poor girl is being possessed by a demon, and this poor mother cannot figure out what is wrong with her child throughout the entire movie, and basically just turns to a priest to just out of pure desperation to try and save her daughter, because no doctor can figure out what's wrong with her. She goes through blood test after blood test after blood test after blood test, can't figure anything out until finally the priest determines that there is a possession and they have to get it out of her. It is such an... It's almost a very sad film to watch because you just want her to be okay. And, even though it doesn't really hit me on the religious level, it hits me on the family level and the emotional level and just a general feeling of helplessness that someone you love is going through something so terrible and you really can't do anything about it but watch. Like that to me is just a really unnerving thing to think about, especially watching the movie. And that is my number 3 favorite horror movie of all time. My number 2 favorite horror movie of all time is a sci-fi horror movie directed by John Carpenter, 1982's The Thing. This movie is just paranoia on steroids. Like, we got this shapeshifter who takes over people's bodies, and nobody knows who's the shapeshifter and who's not, and people who have worked together for years, been friends for years, start turning on each other, killing each other, hating each other, and just doing fucking horrible things. And it's such a relevant movie to make about just how paranoia and distrust can develop so fast, even with people you've known for absolute, like, so many fucking years and work with and, drank beers with and all that shit, just because there's this one shapeshifter who may or may not be taking one of them over. I love the paranoia aspect of it, and again, it's so well shot. The special effects in it are so fucking phenomenal. And, you know, the performances, especially by Kurt Russell and Keith David, absolutely phenomenal. This is one of the greatest movies ever made, not just horror movie, but movies overall ever made. It's John Carpenter's masterpiece. I can't say enough good things about this one. So yeah, The Thing, number 2. My number 1 favorite horror movie of all time is 1979's Alien, directed by Ridley Scott. This is basically almost like The Thing in terms of, you know, being trapped in an isolated location, in this case, space, on a spaceship, with a creature, not a shapeshifter, obviously, but a creature that can just fucking maul you to death and explode out of you, as we see in the movie. And it also shows that aspect of people getting, you know, really exhausted emotionally and turning on each other when they should be really facing this creature instead. And everyone is so stressed out because they're dropping like flies and they're wondering who's next. It is such a well-shot horror movie. It is so atmospheric, so influential as well. And even though I prefer the more action-centric Aliens, I still think this is the greatest horror movie ever made. So yes, Alien, number 1 favorite horror movie of all time. Thank you for asking me this question right before October and Halloween season, Grace. I appreciate it very much, and I hope you enjoyed my list there. And the next question is from Casey the Full of Hell Lover, aka an average meme lord, and he asks, Still Life or Blackwater Park? I think I've made this pretty obvious, especially with my review of Still Life last month with Hayden, if you want to check that out. Still Life absolutely owns Blackwater Park. Even though Blackwater Park is an easy 10 out of 10, Still Life is one of the few albums that I've given 11 out of 10 to. You know, it's an album that I hold near and dear to my heart. It's an album that is full of nice, chunky fucking riffs and melodies and great vocal parts, both clean and guttural, and it has become one of my absolute favorite albums of all time. No disrespect to Blackwater Park at all. That is also a masterpiece, but I personally just prefer Still Life over it. Thank you for your question, average meme lord. And the next question is from Ferris Brett, and he asks, if you were working on a movie set, which director would you want to work with, and what would the film be about? Alright, so in this hypothetical situation, I would probably want to work with Denis Villeneuve. As a French-Canadian myself, like, he is a hero to us. And it's so great to see that his career is taking off in Hollywood. He's made some of the biggest movies of the past, like, 10 years. And I can't wait for Dune 2, even though that got delayed. And he can also do very good personal films as well. Like, if you watch some of his older movies before he branched out into Hollywood and he was still making movies in Canada and Quebec, he made Polytechnique, which is about the École Polytechnique shooting that happened in Montreal in 1989. Really well-made film. And then he did Incendie, which is one of the most gut-wrenching, emotionally exhausting movies I've ever seen in my life. And he is very good at just getting so personal and intimate with the characters in his movies. And he is very good at taking something that, okay, where the themes are very large scale and personalizing it. And in this hypothetical scenario, I'd love to see him come back to Canada and make a film like Incendie or Polytechnique, like something very personal like that, but in the face of a much larger scale. So something about the residential schools in Canada, or something to that effect. Something large scale that happened in this country, but tell a personal story about that time. That would be something that I would love to work with him on. Like, maybe be a writer for it, or even an actor in it. Like, that would be fantastic. So thank you very much for your question, Ferris. And the next question is from Fred Durst Simp, aka Blackwater Russ, and he asks, who is the better vocalist, Rob Halford or Bruce Dickinson? I prefer Iron Maiden, but long answer short, I believe Rob Halford is the better singer. He's got better range. His highs are extremely high. His lows are extremely low. He can be all over the place, and you can really go anywhere with him musically, whereas Bruce Dickinson, amazing singer, not taking anything away from him at all, but he has a bit of a shorter register than Rob, and he is pretty much like an air raid siren only, whereas Rob is an air raid siren, a fucking T-Rex bellow, a crocodile growl, like he's everything. So yeah, Rob Halford, easy answer there, even though Bruce Dickinson, amazing singer. And the next question is from Chompy. Oh, Astolfo, Rider of the Black. And he asks, are you gonna sue Gearbox for infringing on your name and putting you in Borderlands 2? Well, I'll sue them when Corey Ryan Forrester sues me for gerrymander, even though that was a complete fucking accident. Yeah. Oof. It's all a coincidence, but yeah. Whatever. Thanks for your question, Astolfo. And the last question is from Boss Antelope 86, and he asks, what is your thoughts on CM Punk being fired? Well, like all wrestling fans, I'm extremely disappointed that it came to that, because I did not want CM Punk to leave before that relationship had been fully exhausted. Like, I was so looking forward to him working with the Young Bucks when he came in, Kenny Omega, people like that in AEW, and it just never happened. And, you know, it's made me reevaluate CM Punk's time in the WWE, and it made me look back on it and think, you know, his time in the WWE, he was given a lot. Like, yeah, okay, he had things that he had every right to be pissed off about, like the misdiagnosed staph infection. Yeah, I don't blame him at all for being pissed off about that. Same with being fired on his wedding day. That was a really shitty move on WWE's part. But at the same time, a lot of the stuff that he complained about, like, you know, not main eventing WrestleMania, you know what? They gave him like a 500+ day championship run there. They gave him a match with The Undertaker while the streak was still going on, which at that point was bigger than the WrestleMania main event. Like, he was given pretty much everything he wanted, and it still seemed like that wasn't enough for him, and he was just pissed off that he wasn't number one, even though he was definitely one of the top 5 wrestlers in the fucking company. But he was just pissed off that he wasn't being given the John Cena treatment, which, you know, I'm guessing is understandable, but at the same time, dude, you were given everything in that company. And yes, there were things that happened that were out of your control that you have every right to be pissed off about. But at some point, even though they did wrong you on a certain couple of things, you gotta look in the mirror and realize that, hey, you're partly responsible for you losing that job as well. And this same shit happened in AEW. He was given everything he wanted. He got championship runs. He got a championship run right after he came back from fucking injury. When he came back, he immediately went over some of their homegrown talent, like Eddie Kingston, Darby Allin. He went over Hangman Adam Page, who they had been building up since they started, and he won the championship from them. He got main event status. He was the top guy on the card and treated as such. He finally got everything he wanted, and he threw it all away. And yes, okay, we don't know exactly what might have happened behind the scenes, and maybe Hangman Adam Page is that, quote, empty-headed fuck, and the EVPs, the Young Bucks in this case, were very irresponsible or whatever. But no matter what, he handled it in the worst possible way. He didn't handle it like the locker room leader he sees himself as. He handled it like a very antsy fucking teenager. He goes out on a press conference right next to his boss, buries his boss, buries most of the company, and then like is sidelined with a fucking injury and starts a fight backstage on top of it with everybody instead of, you know, trying to resolve it with words. And then he comes back and he goes on a shoot promo saying, oh, I'm sorry that you're just as soft as the wrestlers you like, which, as we now know with his firing, that was absolutely a shoot promo. And then he's given his own fucking show. He is still being given everything he wanted, and it's still not enough. He still finds reasons to be pissed off. Like in this case with Jungle Boy Jack Perry wanting to use real glass. And yes, okay, Jack Perry handled it in not the best way, but neither did Punk. Neither did Punk in this case, and I think this was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I understand that there were things in WWE that weren't his fault. And I understand that there might have been things in Ring of Honor before that weren't his fault. And I understand that there was things involved with him in AEW that weren't his fault and were out of his control. But at some point, you gotta look at all of this drama in all of these companies and realize there's one common denominator here. Like, if everywhere you go, there's a problem, maybe you're the problem. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the whole situation, and it's just really unfortunate for me as a wrestling fan that it had to end like this, because, you know, he could have had an amazing, legendary run in that company and worked with everybody, ranging from fucking... Man, I'm still really pissed off that the rivalry he had with MJF is never going to be complete, because I feel like there was a second chapter of that ready to be written, and it's just not going to happen. And I'm fucking pissed off that he never got to work with Kenny Omega, and that's never going to happen. Like, it's just a really unfortunate situation all around. But at the same time, and I say this as a CM Punk fan, as a guy who marked the fuck out when he came back to AEW 2 years ago, he brought this all on himself. He just did. So... that's what I gotta say about that. And thank you very much for your question, Boss Antelope. And that is the end of the Q&A. And that is it for episode 9 of Mad Mike's Smile Time Variety Cast. Thank you very much for joining, and thank you very much for your questions. And once again, thank you very much to MetalTrenches for joining me in this episode. It was awesome to have him on here, and give him a big thank you. And subscribe to him if you haven't. He is the reason my channel is where it is now. I can't thank him enough. And once again, thank you very much for joining on this episode of the podcast. The next episode will be at the end of October. Au revoir, tabarnak!